So guys, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
How are you guys? Did you go through yesterday's video? Ma'am, make me host, please. All right. So let's start the class. So yesterday we discussed a lot of data regarding our Indian economy. Today we'll be continuing some more data that will be again very useful to you. So now let's talk about the fertilizer sector. So if I talk about fertilizer sector, then the first is nitrogenous fertilizers. So if I talk about nitrogenous fertilizers, whatever is the demand, 65% is the domestic production. And 35% are the imports. Look, even urea, it is not 100% nitrogen. Okay, urea is just 46% nitrogen. If I talk about phosphatic fertilizers, out of the total demand, so total demand, we are able to produce just 70%. 70% is domestic production. Imports is remaining 30%. Yes, imports is 30%. Potassium based fertilizers, whatever is the demand, we are importing 100%. 100% is import. And if I talk about total fertilizer sector, of the total demand, 33% import, 66% domestic production. So why is this happening? You need to understand one thing. Okay? Nitrogenous fertilizers, the total consumption is 19,100, and this is in 1,000 tons. So you can say it like 19100. So 1.9 crore tons. All right. So the reason why this is happening is because the consumption of nitrogenous fertilizer is more. It is 19,100,000 tons. Phosphatic fertilizers, we are only using 7,662,000 tons. Nitrogenous is 19,100,000. And potassium is just hardly 2,600. So we consume more of nitrogenous fertilizers. All right. If I talk about milk production, total milk production in 1951, 1951, milk production in India was 17 million tons. While the milk production in 2019-20, it has become 198 million tons. You can take it approximately 200 million tons. So 200 million tons. Correct? Then, if I talk about electricity, in 1950-51, the total electricity produced by us was 2.3 gigawatts. And in that 2.3 gigawatts, 0.6 was hydro, 1.1 was renewable energy sources, plus thermal, nuclear was nothing, and then we had non-utilities. All right, non-utilities, it contributed remaining 0.6. Non-utilities means they are not selling to the general public, but they are using electricity for their own purpose. That's called non-utilities. All right. Now I need to remember that nuclear for the first time came in 1970-71. Nuclear energy contribution started in 70-71. And if I talk about 2019-20, our total production is 447 gigawatts. In this, 45.7 gigawatts is coming from hydro. 317 is coming from thermal plus renewable energy. 6.8 is coming from nuclear. So total coming from them is how much? Some 370 gigawatts, and non-utilities, it is contributing 77 gigawatts. All right. Then let me tell you about Indian Railways. Look, total route kilometer You will be surprised. In 1950-51 was 53.6 thousand kilometers. In 1950-51, 53.6 or say 53,000 kilometers was the total railway route. In that 53.6, electrified was only 0.4. If I talk about 2019, you know how much we have added? It is just 67.6 is the now. So now we are having 67,000. So in a period of 70 years, we have been able to just add 14,000 kilometers. And then you see this, Britishers, they started in 1857. So from 1857 to 1947, in 90 years, they added 53.6. And in 70 years, we have added only 14. So now you tell me who is doing better. The Britishers are like Indians. Getting it? So every year, hardly we are increasing our railroad by 200 kilometers. That's it. But in this 67.6, now the electrified is 39. 39.9, you can take it to be 40 kilometers. So 40 kilometers of route is electrified now. Total is 67,000 kilometers. At independence, we had some 53,000. All right. Now, let's continue. And now let me tell you about roads. If I talk about roads in 1950-51, it's better I use the next slide. In 1950-51, the total length of roads was 400,000 kilometers. 400,000 kilometers. So this, you take it, the road, the parameter to be 1,000 kilometers. So that time the road was 400. Out of that, the surfaced one, it is total. Surface means the concrete one. The surfaced was 157,000 kilometers. Current scenario over there. Before that, saying it's better we see that 2000 when BJP government came into power. In the year 2000, total was 3374,000 kilometers. Out of that, the surfaced was 1601. Again, 50%. This one was 157, not even 50%. Here we got into 50%. But surprisingly, in the year 2016-17, now in the last 15 years, total has become 6,215. It has become almost double in the last 15 years, and now the surface are 3931. So now we are more focusing on surface roads. In this total of 400 kilometers, that time only 20 kilometers, 20,000 kilometers was the national highway. Here, out of 3374, 1,000 kilometers were national highways. But now we have some 126,000 kilometers as national highways. All right. So out of this much of total 6,215, only 126 is the national highway and 186 is the state highway. Remaining is what? Remaining is the rural roads, all those things. Okay. Now let's come to civil aviation. So we talk about civil aviation. In 1961, the total fleet strength of Air India was 13. And Indian Airlines, Air India was for international routes, Indian Airlines for domestic routes, it was 88. So total fleet strength at that time was just 101. And everything was by the government owned Air India and Indian Airlines. Now, if I talk about current scenario, 2019-20, now both of them have been merged and we have got Air India. Air India, it has got 127. How much addition? It is just 26 addition. But obviously, we have Air India, we have Alliance Air, which is 19, Air India Express, we have 25, but that is about Air India, right? So Air India total dekh lo kitna hai? 152 plus 19, it's 171 is total with Air India. Private is 498. So private airlines, they have a fleet strength of 498 right now. If I talk about passengers handled, currently in the year 1920, the Airports Authority of India airports, so that is the government airports, they handled 1.6 thousand lakh of passengers. 1.6 thousand lakh of passengers were catered to by Air India passengers, Air India airports, sorry, Airport Authority of India airports. And if I talk about joint venture international airports, the private ones, the joint venture international airports, they handled 1.8 thousand lakhs. So joint venture international airports can be Hyderabad, Mumbai, Delhi. All right. Then next is crude oil. So when I talk about crude oil, the total production in India is 254. The total consumption, the total refinery output, I will be taking now. The total refinery throughput is 254 million tons. We will not go into that. you need to remember domestic production of crude oil. Domestic production of crude oil is just 32 million tons. In this domestic, onshore and offshore, both are contributing 16 million tons each. Rather, onshore is little bit more, it is 16.2, so we will be taking it 30.2, 2.2. So in total production of 32.2 million tons of crude oil, offshore is producing 62, onshore is producing 16.2 million tons, offshore is producing 16 million tons. Offshore means in the seas, that is offshore. Like we have Bombay High, that is our offshore, or KG Basin, that is offshore. All right. Now, this is domestic production. How much? 32 million tons. And we are having how much? 254 million tons we are consuming. So our imports are anything around 222 million tons. All right. Then if I talk about liabilities of the central government, liabilities or say debt of the central government, then internal liabilities, they are 47% of GDP. In this internal liabilities, internal debt, it is 39%, and market borrowings, it is remaining 8%. There's a mistake, sorry. In internal liabilities is total 47. In this 47, 38, yeah, I told right, that is 39 is internal debt, and other internal liabilities are 8, remaining 8%. And in this internal debt of 39%, market borrowings is 29%. External debt is very minuscule. It is 1.4% of GDP. This internal liabilities actually to be correct, it is 47.4%, but we will take it like 47%. So total liabilities, or say total liabilities or total debt of Indian government, it is 48.5% of GDP. It is actually very, very less. Very less. Countries they have like more than 200% of GDP as their debt. Alright. Then let's come to PSUs. Public sector units. Now, public sector units currently they are operating PSUs in India are 249. Data of 2018-19. Total PSUs are 249. In this 249, 178 are profit making. 70 are loss making. One, it goes in no profit. One, it goes in no profit, no loss. If I talk about the addition of revenues from these PSUs, if we add on the profit making, loss of them, then all this, if we add all of them, then the total dividend which comes to government from PSUs is 71,000 crores. All right. Total dividend which is coming to the government is 71,000 crore rupees, and this is less. And look in the year 17-18. In the year 17-18, we got 76,000 crores. In the year 16-17, we got 78,000 crores. All right, so it has been reducing. The dividend part has been reducing. Then next is, let's talk about scheduled commercial banks. I talk about scheduled commercial banks, all private sector banks, public sector banks, then the demand with them, the total demand deposits with them are 16 lakh crore rupees. The time deposits 131 lakh crore rupees. So say that is 8 times. Time deposits is like around 8 times of demand deposits. So total deposit is how much? 147 lakh crores. How much is borrowings from RBI? Borrowings from RBI is 77,000 crore rupees. So I hope now you can understand why do we have incomplete transmission of monetary policy. The total amount which banks are getting from public is 147 lakh. It's 147 lakh. And how much they are getting from the public? It is just 77,000. Not even 1 lakh. Not even 1 lakh. Yes, 16 lakh, 131 lakh, 147 lakhs. So it is 150 times the deposits from public, if we add demand and time deposits, it is 147 times, rather more than 147 times, as compared to borrowings from RBI. So obviously, the rate of interest at which this money will be borrowed will be deciding the lending rate. The repo rate will hardly have any impact. How much is the investment in government securities? all scheduled commercial banks, they have borrowed government security worth of 44 lakh crore rupees. And how much is the bank credit? But how much is the total loan given by the banks? Total bank credit given by the banks till now, if I'm not adding the total, I'm talking about outstanding. Outstanding means how much is already there in the market, how much is left. Even they are also outstanding. That is, this much amount of demand deposits are still with the banks. This much of time deposit is still with the bank. Similarly, 1 crore. It is a total bank credit which is outstanding with the people. That this much amount of loan has been given by the banks. This much amount of money the banks would have to collect from the public. All right, 1 crore rupees. All right. Next is they are about number of branches. Number of branches. Look, 2020 I am talking about. All right. In 2020, the total branches which India has is 1.5 lakhs of all the banks. Total branches of all the banks in India is 1.5 lakhs. In this 1.5 lakhs, public sector banks, their branches is around 88,000. Foreign, this is PSBs. Foreign banks, their branches are just 308. RRBs, their branches are 22,000. Local area banks, 91. Private banks, 35,000. Small finance banks, 4,300, 4.3 thousand. And payment bank, just 765. Now let me tell you about rural branches. So how much is the percentage of rural branches? For public sector banks, there are 33% of branches are in rural areas. Foreign banks, their 5% branches are in rural areas. How did they do it? That's quite amazing. RRBs, 70% branches in rural areas. What does that mean? That RRBs can have branches even in urban areas also. Local area banks, 14% branches. Private banks, 21%. Small finance banks, 18%. Payment banks, 5%. If I talk about total, out of total branches of 1.5 lakhs, the percentage of total rural branches is 35%. 35% of total branches of all the banks in India, they are in rural areas. All right. If I talk about our forex reserves, So next topic is forex reserves. Are you guys writing it, by the way? Now my speaker is on. Are you guys writing it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So you see this, the total foreign exchange reserves which India had in 1950-51. The total forex reserve we had was just $2 billion. $2 billion. The minimum forex reserve which we have ever had was in 60-61. In 61-62, we had our minimum foreign exchange reserves. That time it was just $624 million. We got SDRs for the first time in our forex reserves in 1969. All right. In 1969, we got forex reserves in India. In our forex reserve for the first time. Same happened with other countries also. If I talk about 1991, our forex reserve was some $5.8 billion. So see this, that in this 40 years, this 40 years we were able to add just $4 billion. And if we see current scenario 2021, our forex reserve is $550 billion. So in the last 30 years, we have been able to make it 100 times. And here in 40 years, we were just able to make it like 3 times. Right? So from $2 billion to $6 billion, we got in 40 years. But from 5.8 to 550, we got it in just 30 years. All right. Then next is super exciting thing. BOP. So we talk about BOP. So BOP, this is for the year 1920, all right? In the year 1920, I am talking about 8-minute dollar. Our merchandise exports. Our merchandise exports was of $320 billion. Merchandise exports in 1920 were $320 billion, and merchandise imports were of $474 billion. All right. So hence merchandise trade balance was some $154 billion negative. All right. And if I talk about services, it was just $81 billion positive. I'm talking about net. And if I talk about the invisibles part, so this is visibles, right? This is visibles. If I talk about in this, about income, income was negative. How much negative? Just will have to calculate 6.1, 8.6, 74 and 48. मैं से एक साथ कुछ दे रहा हूँ 24.9 billion dollars was negative of income. So overall invisibles for India was 132 billion dollars. Or $132 billion. So if I talk about current account, total current account, it comes out to be minus $22 billion. So we had a current account deficit of current account deficit of $22 billion. Then this was about the current account. If we move to the capital account, if I talk about net FDI, look, there has been an outflow of FDI as well as an inflow of FDI. All right. All right, I'll tell you. If I talk about inflow of FDI, it was some $56 billion. Outflow of FDI, it was some $13 billion. So hence net FDI was $43 billion. And net FPI, it was just $1.4 billion. So FDI is around what? You see, FDI is around 3 times, 40 times. 40 times that of FDI. So we have a stable foreign investment coming. So if we talk about total capital account was surplus. How much? $84 billion. So capital account surplus of $84 billion, current account deficit of $22 billion. Hence, we had a BOP gain. Wait, 84, current account is minus 25. So surplus is 84. So we had a BOP surplus of around $62 billion. So remember this, that India is having an overall BOP surplus only. But that was not the case in the year 18-19. In the year 18-19, we had a BOP deficit. In the year 18-19, we had a BOP deficit. And the reasons for that was that in the year 2018-19, our current account deficit was huge. And in the year 1920, our current account deficit reduced. Like in the year 18-19, our current account deficit was $57 billion. But here we had some $32 billion. All right. So because of the current account deficit, we had this trouble. Then let me tell you about exchange rate of rupee. Are you even finding this type of data useful? That's my whole point. That's my whole concern. You guys there? No one is finding it useful. It is useful, okay? It will be clearing a lot of your doubts when you will be clearing this talk, when you will be clearing these facts with the concepts. Like many times the students have doubt, do we have a BOP deficit or surplus? Which one is more? Which one do we get more? FDI or FPI? So seeing the fact only we are able to tell what are we getting more. All right. So if I talk about exchange rate, in the year 1993, $1 was 31.5 rupees. And now in the month of or in the year of 2021, $1 has become 74. So rupee has depreciated over a period of time. But remember this, whether it is last 5 years or the last 10 years, it's not that rupee has depreciated regularly. There has been depreciation, appreciation both. All right. For example, in 1718, as compared to 1617, rupee appreciated. So here in 1718, rupee was 64 and here it was 67. So rupee appreciated. All right. And in the year 1920, it was 70. 1920, it was $1 equal to 70. So rupee is depreciating. Rupee has depreciated in the last 2 years, but it's not that it has always depreciated. There has been always been like ups and down scenarios. All right. Now next is like super important. Next time I'll be telling you about NIR and REIR. Okay, if I talk about NIR and REIR both, for the both of them, the base year is 2004-5. The base year for NIR and REIR is 4-5, and for the base year, the value is always 100. So NIR in 2004-5 was 100, and REIR in 2004-5 was also 100. But if we see 2019, NIR 6. NIR 6 rear 6, near 36, and rear 36. All right. So near 6 in 2019 was 64, and rear 6 was 126. Near 36 was 73, and it was 116. So can't you see here that in these 15 years, rupee has depreciated in nominal terms, but it has appreciated in real terms. I hope now you're able to understand, or now you're able to see how near and rear works. So near is also index, rear is also an index. All right. Then let us start to talk about our imports and exports. If I talk about our imports, the first one is petroleum, oil, and lubricants, POL. Second is capital goods. Third one is electronic goods. Fourth one is gold and silver. And fifth one is chemicals. And if I talk about exports, in case of exports, the biggest contribution is coming from petroleum products. Second is agricultural goods. Sorry. Second is gems and jewelries. Third is agricultural goods. Fourth is machinery and instruments. And then is transport equipments. Now, if I talk about India's share in total exports of the world, it is just 1.7%. And the biggest contribution is of rice. India's rice export is 28% of total world export. Then is pearls, 18% of total exports. And then spices, 16% of the world's exports. Now this is important. Now we will be coming on to socio-economic indicators. Socio-economic indicators. Okay. If I talk about life expectancy at birth, life expectancy at birth, in India's case, life expectancy at birth is 69 years. In that, females is 70.4 years. And for male, the life expectancy is 67.8. Remember this only 69. In the 69, topmost is Kerala, which is 75. And to your surprise, the second state is Jammu and Kashmir, where it is 74%. And minimum batao, minimum will be Uttar Pradesh, is Uttar Pradesh. Minimum is Uttar Pradesh with 65. Next is IMR, infant mortality rate. Infant mortality rate, in India's case, it is 32 per thousand. In India's case, IMR is 32. Minimum, again, in Kerala, with just 7. Maximum. Okay, can anyone tell where will be the maximum? Maximum is in Madhya Pradesh, 48. And then maximum second is in Uttar Pradesh, 43. Next is birth rate. India's birth rate is 20 per thousand. Here, minimum is of Punjab, 14.2. Maximum, Bihar, 26.2. India's death rate is 6.2 per thousand. Here, the maximum is with Odisha, 7.3. And you know what? In this case, Kerala is at number 2 in death rate, 6.9. Minimum death rate, it is happening in, very surprisingly, Jammu Kashmir, 4.9. Then next is TFR, total fertility rate. India's TFR is 2.2%. Maximum TFR is of Bihar, 3.2. And which is the state with minimum? There are 4 states with minimum. Oh no, only one state is minimum. West Bengal. So I don't think it will happen. The data may be fudged. It's saying West Bengal is 1.5. I don't agree to this. We'll take it, but still it says 1.5. 1.6, it is of various states. Andhra, Punjab, Jammu Kashmir, Punjab. What shouldn't we wait? Yes, Punjab, Himachal, Jammu Kashmir. And Tamil Nadu. All of them, they have a TFR of 1.6. Then let's talk about gross enrollment ratio. Where I won't be discussing with you gross enrollment ratio of elementary schools or secondary schools. We are more worried about gross enrollment ratio of higher education. So for higher education, the highest gross enrollment ratio is in the state of Sikkim. And second is Tamil Nadu. All right. Then let's come to literacy rate. Look, if I talk about literacy rate of even 1961, even that time Kerala was having 55. 55 was the literacy rate in 1961 for Kerala. That's a huge amount because if we see Bihar of 2011, Bihar of 2011 still has only 61. Getting it? And 2011 of Kerala is 94. Overall literacy rate of India in 1951 was 18.3%, and now in the year 2011 it has moved to 73%. Then if I talk about access to safe drinking water, access to safe drinking water. You have any idea which state in 2011, it is just 2011, which state had minimum households with access to clean drinking water? The number is 33. State is Kerala. Punjab maximum 97.6. Let's talk about population. India's population in 1951 was 3.6 lakh thousand. ₹36 crores. And now it has become 135 crores. The maximum population is of Uttar Pradesh. Now, maximum is of Uttar Pradesh. Second, Bihar. Third, Tamil Nadu. No, third is Maharashtra. Mistake. Third is Maharashtra. Fourth is Madhya Pradesh. Fifth is Tamil Nadu. Then, child sex ratio. Child sex ratio, the maximum is in Meghalaya and Mizoram. 970. Child sex ratio means up to 0 to 6 years. But in this age group, how many girls are there per 1,000 boys? It's 970. The minimum is for Haryana, 834. Then Jammu Kashmir, 862. Now that completes the major economic data which was given in Economics Survey Volume 2. I haven't till now touched the chapters. There are some around 170 pages given at the end of Volume 2. Alright, so I have like zeroed down, I read them, and all those 170 pages were broken down into these 2 lectures. Alright, so on Monday I'll be doing with you last chapter of Volume 2, that is services. I hope it is services. No. The last chapter of Volume 2 is social infrastructure, employment, and human development. That chapter we'll be doing it on Monday. All right. Okay, guys. See you. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Bye.